Well, everyone, welcome to Out and Back. I have a great guest today. It's Ann Wiper, and Ann is the Vice President and General Merchandising Manager for or GMM for Smartwool. She has been with Smartwool for 16 years, which is a really long time. She's also worked with in the footwear business with Pearl Izumi and Solomon. And she started her career with ACG with some of the friends that I knew that started in ACG too. Ann, it's great to have you on the program.
Nice to be here.
So I wanted to talk with you, starting with merino wool. When Peter and Patty Duke started the Smartwool in Steamboat, merino wool was absolutely new, and it wasn't a category, and they sold it in as it's not itchy, it's breathable, you're going to love it, and of course all of us in the outdoor business started to love it, and it grew and grew and grew. Merino wool now is everywhere, and it's almost a vertical in and of itself. How does Smartwool continue to be a category leader when you have so much company?
It's a super good question, because I think anytime anything gains favor with consumers, more brands want to jump in. Wool is not the easiest thing to work with. I think people and brands find that out as they are starting to try to work with merino. But I think for Smartwool, we have chosen to partner with New Zealand Merino for really since the beginning. And we have always purchased what is called ZQ wool, which is certification that is about really protecting animals. It's animal husbandry, it's work, it's social practices on the farm. And it also ensures quality for us. But what we've been doing more recently is really two things. Smartwool has always been just based on merino wool being a natural fiber and renewable, has always had a great sustainability base. But what we've done in the last couple years is partnered actually with Icebreaker and Allbirds, and we are working with New Zealand Merino to create essentially certified regenerative wool. And so that's called ZQRX. And for us, I think it was maybe 2 years ago. I'm always like 2 years ahead, so I have a hard time knowing like my normal place and time. But we published some sustainability goals, one of which is to be climate positive by 2030. And really the only way we can get there, we're going to use recycled materials like everybody else is, but that's kind of par for the course. The way that we can get there is through regenerative farming practices. And so that to me is a much bigger step forward than just purchasing merino wool off the open market. It is, it's the step that we're going to have to take to be able to really knock back the carbon footprint. So I would say if you're purely talking about the wool itself, that's a giant step. So I think right now 65% of our sheep stations are adopting the practices. We were shooting for 2025 to have all of the wool transition to regenerative certified. May take longer. It's one of those things in transition. But I think the other thing we're doing, and this is not even out yet, But we have, and I will say I have been pushing hard on this because as somebody who's made product in this industry for 30 plus years, I am very aware of the impact of what I do and what we make. And we launched we call it a second cut, but we launched a sock take back program April a year ago. And we have taken back more than 120,000 pairs of socks. It's largely done online, but we have retailers that work with us. They can be socks from anyone. And last December, we launched a dog bed that used shredded material from the socks. But our end game was always to get to a new yarn. And we're about a month and a half away from a new yarn, which we're going to use to create new socks. So those new socks will use regenerative wool. They will use a mix, and we have to figure out how much. But in our classic hike program, we'll use our circular yarn that comes from the sock waste that you can't donate any other way. And to me, if we can pull that many raw materials out of the system, we are really leading the way in using a combination of regenerative and ultimately recycled wool. So there's so much going on right now in how do you lead in the wool space. And I don't know anybody else that's doing this.
Well, that's a great story. First of all, it's a big story. I thought, frankly, you were going to go, well, we're into the apparel business now, and we're into the sock business, and we're designing, and we're doing this and that and the other. I didn't know that this bringing in socks, and like people just dump the socks off, whether they have holes in them or not. If they don't need them anymore, they whatever it is, and they're just dumping it off. And where do they send them in? What do they? How do they?
Well, there's a couple ways right now. So if you go on our website and you order anything, the first thing that pops up is a take back kit. And so you can get that with your order, and it comes with a prepaid shipping bag, and you just stuff any of your old socks in there, any brand, preferably wool. And those ship to a partner we discovered in North Carolina who consolidates, sorts, and then we have done small scale grinding, but the big grind is going to happen in June. And that's where we're going to actually get to proving that we can make this happen and really have truly a circular program. But we also have a number of retailers. We just did a big expansion in the retailers, and I don't know how many there are, but we have drop-off bins, and when those bins fill up, they just ship them to North Carolina, and then we work on making them into new socks.
So quickly on this answer, how much wool do you think you'll be recycling back into the marketplace? Any idea?
No, right now, no, because we're so on the front end of this. I don't know. I mean, the first thing we have to do is create a product that's going to last. Like, it's got to meet the same durability standards. And so, we're comparing it to beautiful, long, staple fiber, gorgeous merino wool.
Ski socks.
Yeah. And so I don't know if it's going to be, okay, 20% or 50%. I don't know yet, and then we also have no idea how is it going to die, so we're very much on the front end of this, but I just am really encouraged by the fact that, okay, we're trialing this in socks first. Our plan is to launch them next April on Earth Day. We're going to do accessories also, hats and gloves. And the plan would be able to do regional takebacks and also bring it into apparel. So I just think there's so much potential in what can happen here. And our our intention is to share this because while Smartwool has grown and is a significant player now, we're never gonna, well, I shouldn't say never, but we're not like the super big players out in the industry. Like we need the Nikes, the Adidas, the big players in the world to be thinking, how do we stop using so many virgin materials, and what are we doing with the product's end of life?
Really, really interesting. I want to shift gears here. That is fascinating. I didn't realize that was going to be the storyline, but good for you guys. The industry is rapidly changing, and we've gone from, you and I have gone to trade shows. I started going to the trade shows in Reno.
So did I, as a buyer.
And so, I mean, there are a lot of card tables, and it's moved all the way through to Denver now, and apparently it's coming back to Salt Lake City. But the trade shows don't have the cachet that they used to, and they're having problems attracting some of the bigger brands. And the publishers that used to publish magazines are now starting online, and it's a membership based. And there's continued acquisition of the outdoor brands by much larger private equity companies, venture capital companies, and the industry is changing. And my question to you is, first of all, what changes do you see in the industry? Do you see what I'm seeing? And how do you think that's going to affect us long term? Because it used to be a pretty close-knit tribe. Now it's not.
It's an interesting question. I kind of feel like it's a reflection of what's happening in the outdoors and participation in general. I think if we think about it from the trade or the industry side, I think the COVID and the pandemic forced everybody to work really, really differently. And I think we've learned what do we need and what do we not need. And I think trade shows in particular, I do think they had played out their purpose a while ago. You think about all the activities that took place at a trade show from our world on the material side. It's when we met with so many of our suppliers. Most of the purchasing was done. And so if a trade show initially was set up so that retailers could purchase from brands, a lot of that was already finished. And so I think, the pandemic was really just a big catalyst for change. And so brands have become more consumer centric. How do we take this almost business of the outdoors and reformat it? I think there's still a need to gather. There's still a need to exchange ideas. There's, I think, so many other components of like the outdoor economy that could be better represented with a different format. So I don't know what the future will bring in that. For me, there's no question that it needs to change. And I think really sitting down and thinking about what are the best uses of that gathering time and how do we make it productive, where I think a lot of brands looked at the expense of a trade show and we're like, is this really worth us funding all of this? So
Yeah.
I think it'll be centered on the consumer. I think it'll be centered on the shift of there are just flat out way more people getting outdoors, and it's not as hardcore. Um, I think it's just truly people getting outside to experience the benefits of being outside, whether that's hiking, climbing, boating of some sort. It's a very different, it's a different world now.
And it is a different world. And I want to kind of play off that a little bit with regard to, again, the outdoor business. When we started in it, we were thrilled to have anybody participate with us in climbing, in skiing, in hiking. You're interested in camping. And since the pandemic, I think, and certainly over the last few years, there's been a move for more inclusion in the outdoor business. And some of us are looking at it, well, of us old timers, well, we've always been inclusive. And now we're starting to learn that maybe we weren't as inclusive as we thought we were. Do you have any insights into that?
Um, Absolutely. I will say one of the things we did a lot of work on vision and values with Smartwool probably 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the values we stated was inclusivity. And I think we've always been a very welcoming brand, but I think sorry, what I've learned in the last couple of years, we've done a ton of training. We've I actually took a class through FIT on inclusive design last spring, which was awesome because it opens up your eyes to the fact that we can't just be welcoming or think it's open to everyone. We all come from such different places, and I'd be willing to bet that most of us that spent many of our high school and college years climbing, skiing, backcountry, everything, grew up camping and had a family that took them camping. And I would say there's been a couple kind of pivotal moments for me in the last 3 to 4 years where I realized it's more than being welcoming. We have to invite. And I think I went to an REI event called Outessa. They had a variety of them all over the country. And it was really cool because we camped, we had a Smartwool tent. I was teaching people about layering. And there were women there from all over the country, all walks of life, mothers and daughters, sisters, friends. And I got to spend 2 days talking to them. And there was one woman, she was Black, she was a project manager from Dallas. And she came because she wanted to take her family backpacking and she'd never done it. And she had absolutely no idea how to do it. And so while the world is open to it, unless you have the skills, have an open door to it, and then it's just size is another thing. I realized half the people there couldn't wear a product. So about a year later, we launched our extended sizes program, which we've evolved now to plus sizes, which is a better pattern approach to the changing body types. So there was that. And I also had, just recently, we had our brand day, ski day, super fun, everybody outside, first time we'd all been together. And we had a speaker and she was trans and she grew up in the climbing world, has written guidebooks out in Utah. And she went from a male to a female and was telling her story. And it was super powerful. And I think at that point, I've she said one of the questions she gets is people always say, I don't care who you sleep with, who you love, doesn't matter to me, let's get out and climb. But I think there's so much persecution and such aggressive behavior by so many people that she made a comment that when she goes to a new town, she'll look for like a pride flag or a sign because she knows that she'll be safe in that environment. And I think we've got to understand that it's more than just having the door open, it's inviting people in, it's helping them learn, it's watching for people that are inappropriate and not standing for it. It's saying something, it's standing up for people. And have a couple of friends that I snowboard with, and they're Black. And I used to hear them talk about how people would make comments, and I'm like, oh, come on, they don't do that. We're just all outside having fun. And when you're with them, you realize it. And I do think it's our responsibility to bring our friends of color to make sure that people are prepared and comfortable and stand up for them. It's a different world and it should be open to everyone.
And when do you think that started? Do you think that started long before the pandemic? Do you think it was put on steroids because of the pandemic, or our recognition of the gay population, the trans population, Afro-Americans?
I think the George Floyd was a pivotal moment for the company or the country in general. I think it's been building for a long time. And I think the outdoor industry's been extraordinarily white. I mean, and if we're being really honest, it's been white males.
Yep.
And if we look at kind of how the world is evolving and our world is evolving, like right now it's 60-year-old white guys kind of taking care of everything. We need to bring more people in so that they understand there's a reason to protect it and to make sure it stays there. So I do think this next generation is going to be critical to be a diverse population that cares about open spaces and what open spaces do for mental health.
One of the things that this is kind of along those same lines. One of the things that we'll be writing a blog about in our next newsletter is fit, and how many brands are still missing the point with regard to fit. And one of our examples is of a really, really good fit guide that this clothing company has. And that you can even get a fit consultant they'll talk to you about
That's cool.
how to do it. Does Smartwool see a fit problem with regard to more people are getting into the outdoor business? We just talked about being more inclusive, more body types, more everything. How are you addressing that online?
Well, we have been doing extended sizes, which isn't perfect, but it's a better than nothing solution. And fall 22, we introduced plus sizes for women. We've had more demand on the women's side. We are going to follow it up with Big Man, which is kind of the men's equivalent, but we're doing it in our core program. So we have our merino thermal base layer. It's the merino 250. It's really at the center of our apparel business. And so we're doing it in that category, and we're pretty much all in. So we're doing it online. We've done extended and plus with REI. We're now selling it across our wholesale channel. And I think it's going to take a little while to really adopt, but we wanted to do it in the thing that we're the most known for. And that's, we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ann, I probably should tell the audience that I had some shoulder surgery, so that's I'm not carrying around a weapon. I'm actually I'm actually got a sling on here, and I'll be in this for another 3 weeks for shoulder surgery. But I thank you. This has been insightful. It's been enlightening, and I've learned a lot. And thank you for being our guest on Out and Back.
Thanks for having me. Fun to talk about it.